Hi, everybody. Welcome to Convertible Conversations. I'm back live now after doing some repost of videos that we did over a year ago, and appreciate all of your comments and people writing and calling me and wishing me good wishes and praying for me and recovery from back surgery and pneumonia. And I'm pretty much recovered now. So we're going to start a little series now, a 6-day thing, starting September 1st. We're going to start a series on grace, which I've come to understand is God's unconditional love in action for everyone. That's a lot different than what I used to think grace was. God's unconditional love in action for everyone. That's how God has always existed and always related to everyone, even since before creation. And God has never changed. Now, keeping that in mind, I'd like you to imagine today a city that's very divided. It consists primarily of two groups which are extremely hateful towards each other. You could call one the ultra left and the other the ultra right, if you will. Each group sincerely thinks they are right and the other group is wrong. Each group who thinks they're right thinks that God loves them and favors them, but that God hates and is going to punish the other group. All right? You got that in your mind? All right. Now imagine that the leader of one of those groups comes to town and has a rally, a big, huge rally, maybe 20,000 people there, and they're all excited and they're holding up signs and all that kind of stuff, and they're really for him and everything. But outside, there's an equally large group of protesters. And then after the meeting, they clash. There are angry words, there's fights, the police have to come in, there's tear gas, people are getting beaten and hit and hurt, and rocks are being thrown. Some people actually get killed. Can you imagine something like that even happening? Well, of course, because it's happening today in the United States where I live, and in other countries where many of you all who are watching live. I want to give you a quote from a book that I've written that's going to be out in a month or so called Convertible Conversations. It's not about these conversations that we have. It's about a grandfather raising his orphaned 10-year-old grandson. And in the process, one of the things that happens is he's trying to help the father of one of his grandson's friends, who happens to be a military officer. And the guy is asking him about hell. And the grandfather, the main character in the book, says, hell is experiencing human sin, greed, lust, pride, oppression, hypocrisy, dishonesty, violence, racism, chauvinism, abuse of power, and all injustice. And people are experiencing hell right now all over the world. And he says to this army officer, the army, as you know, can go into a country and free people from unjust dictators and governments. But only Jesus can help each of us see those hurtful things in our own selves. Now, let me remind you of what happened to the Apostle Paul several times in his ministry. He would go into towns, draw huge crowds, people would be all excited, and then opposing people would come who didn't like him, didn't think he was representing God. They beat him, put him in prison. One time they stoned him to death, left him outside of town. That happened a lot. And of course, it continues to happen today, as it always has, not only in the United States, but worldwide. So let me ask you first, what does not work in trying to stop judging like that, hatred, violence, racism, all that kind of stuff? Well, history shows us legislation doesn't work, rules don't work, education doesn't work, government, religion, it doesn't work. So what is the answer? How do you stop that? Well, we're going to see in the next few days. Before you can see what the answer is, we first got to see what the root of the problem is. The Bible tells us in Romans 3:23 and 24, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified, the same all are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came by Jesus Christ. Every single person has missed the mark. And the illustration of that from Bible times is an archer shooting arrows at a target, but the arrows falling short and missing the mark. Well, what is that mark? Contrary to what I was taught when I was growing up, the mark is not moral perfection. The mark is judging what's the problem is, the sin is judging what is right and wrong. That's what causes that problem to begin with. Missing the mark is judging what's right and wrong. See, Adam and Eve lived in a world where there was no sin and there was no good and evil. God said, you can do anything you want, but don't eat of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Leave it alone. I don't want you deciding what's good and what's evil, because everybody has different ideas of that. And when you think that God's showing you that your group is good and that the other people are evil, then evil's going to happen. So we need to start at a different place rather than good or evil. We need to start before that in God's economy. Yes, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Well, what exactly is the glory of God? We'll start looking at that next time. Remember today, grace is God's unconditional love in action for everyone. That's how God has always existed and always related to everyone since before creation. And God has never changed. Hey, thanks everybody. See you tomorrow.